Hey, good afternoon. Scott Luton here with you live on Supply Chain Now. Welcome back to the show. We are broadcasting live today from MODEX, the largest supply chain trade show in the Western Hemisphere. You probably hear a lot of the buzz behind us, and it's being held right here in Supply Chain City, Atlanta, GA. On this episode, we're speaking with a very interesting and innovative technology company that is doing some really neat things to connect people, products, and things to the internet, especially from a cellular standpoint. Stay tuned as we look to increase your
supply chain IQ.
Quick programming note, like all of our podcasts, you can find our podcast wherever you get yours from. Be sure to subscribe and listen so you don't miss a single thing. You've already heard him. He's back. He is back. Let's welcome in my fearless co-host on today's show, Greg White, serial supply chain tech entrepreneur, trusted advisor, and new one, Atlanta City champion, tennis champion. Had to put champion in there twice.
Tennis champion, city champion.
That's right.
Thank you. Yeah.
So your championship belt will be a couple of weeks old by the time this is published. So you'll have a better time to savor and understand what got you there, right, Greg?
Yeah. If you follow me on Twitter, you can see my trophy.
That's true.
I might have consued a cereal malt beverage out of it.
It's like a chalice, or it's like
a
plate, golden plate or something.
Yeah. It's like the Wimbledon trophy. It's a plate. We call it in Alta, the Atlanta Lawn Tennis, a dinner plate. If you win, you get a salad plate if you take second place. So we got the dinner plate.
In 500 years,
it'll still be
Indiana
here.
Jones will be
digging it up
on a quest to go find it.
He'll be much more impressed with my wife's collection of plates because she's got a lot more of the big dinner plates than I do.
Well, as much as I'm sure our listeners tuned in to hear
talk about
Greg
tennis?
White's tennis
Yes.
legendary career,
Yeah.
we've got a really neat story, and I think what I believe, doing my homework, an intriguing business leader that we're interviewing here today on today's episode. Again, coming to you live from MODEX, Scott Schwalbe, co-founder and CEO at NimbeLink. Scott, how you doing?
I am doing great. Thanks for having me.
Well, we have enjoyed our interactions with Vin so much that we figure in our short little 5-minute study of you, the culture, you've got a great sense of humor at NimbeLink.
We do, and Ven's becoming an icon in the IoT world.
I believe it.
He's disrupting things everywhere he goes.
You better be careful. He's coming for your job. I'm telling you, man. He is after it.
Awesome.
So let's talk about, before we start talking shop, Scott, and start learning more about.
This is going to get confusing for me, I can tell.
Yeah, you're between two Scotts.
Scott. It's a new show, Between Two Scotts.
That's right. Let's get to know you better. So Scott Schwalbe, tell us where you grew up and give us an experience or two that helped shape your worldview as you were coming through your upbringing.
Sure. Yeah. So I grew up. Was born in Minnesota, and my dad was a builder and contractor. So I grew up in that world, and I knew I didn't want to do that, so I got out of there as fast as I could.
Why didn't you want to do it?
That's a lot of work. Yeah, shingling and doing that type of manual labor,
especially in Minnesota weather.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. Back then in the late '70s, early '80s, there wasn't lifts, and there was just ladders and
hammers and nails.
That's right. That's right.
None of those air tools or any of that stuff. Right.
Yeah, and I don't know if I'm like anybody else in the world, but I had no idea what I wanted to do when I grew up. So I joined the Navy and started my career there. And I walked in and I said, I want the shortest enlistment and the longest school, and I don't really want to go out to sea. What do you guys think?
They're like the Air Force.
They said Air Force. Yeah, they said Air Force is two tables down.
Exactly. So I had, and I was fortunate. Just had a great experience my first 4 years in the Navy, and next thing you know, because of lack of planning, I retired in 200001 after 20 years in the Navy.
Okay.
Thank you. Congrats.
Yeah, thank you.
That is, 20 years in the Navy. It's never, from what I understand, I was a one-term Air Force enlisted, but all the folks that I speak to that 20 years and retired. I mean, it's not easy regardless of what branch, but in the Navy, where from what I understand, and please correct me if I'm wrong, half of each year you're out at sea.
Yeah, did they manage to keep you on land for 20 years? Or
not the whole 20 years, but I was fortunate. I was never permanently stationed on a ship.
Wow.
I had great opportunities. I was trained as a cryptologist, as a linguist. So I studied a couple different foreign languages, and I spent 8 years of my life at NSA in the four
National
walls.
Security
Agency. Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
the guys who listen to our phone calls.
That's right. So that's that's where it started. So you asked about where's an interest.
Talk about shaping your future, right? Yeah.
Exactly. And so it was, and then I went into recruiting, and and figured out, I got my MBA and said, okay, I'm going to retire now. What do I do?
Anywhere that keeps you on dry land. It seems like you managed to figure out what those gigs were.
That's right.
So what languages did you learn? I'm curious.
Arabic and Farsi.
Okay,
that's what the Iranians
outstanding.
speak,
Yeah,
so.
of course.
So I could talk about it now.
Persian, essentially.
Yeah, Persian. Yeah. So I couldn't have talked to, I wouldn't have told you this probably 15, 20 years ago. So.
You couldn't have told us because you'd have to kill us.
Exactly, yeah. So now you can live.
Thank you. I'm glad to hear it.
Yeah, as long as you don't catch a virus.
You know what? Yeah. That's probably one of the best things that's ever happened to me on this show.
So, Scott, we were in Arizona a few weeks ago covering a conference out there, and I sat down and interviewed a former naval aviator that also, as part of his career, he operated the paddles on aircraft carriers. And I just happened to watch Midway, the movie, the revision of the movie, legendary movie that came out, and to see the guys operate the paddles, they've got to have nerve. I mean, I'm not sure who's braver, those folks that do the paddles or the pilots themselves.
Yeah,
sure.
And it's a gift.
It really is, yeah. But the flip side of what the side that you're describing, the linguists, the folks that are trying to garner market intel at a time when the military valued that much more so than the consumer, the private sector side. Nowadays, market intel probably is equally valued, regardless wherever you sit, right?
Yeah. If you believe the science, data is the new bacon.
That's
doesn't taste as good, but it's as equally as prevalent.
Have you trademarked that?
Yeah, I've seen it on actually bumper stickers.
Okay,
so I have not trademarked.
Data is the new bacon. We're going to steal that.
All right.
All right. So
everybody loves it.
Everybody,
and they want to consume it.
Yeah.
All right, so let's shift gears. So when you retired, you had obviously a great naval career in an area that a lot of linguists get out. There's a lot of, from what I understand, highly valued skills and experiences they've had as you're moving into the private sector. You had an MBA. So tell us about what's the first thing you did retiring.
First thing I did is really tried to figure out the next role in my life. How do I get completely out of the government and not ever deal with that? So I happened to be living in Rochester, Minnesota at the time.
Okay.
And IBM had a big presence there, and so I ended up got involved with a publicly traded company, Celestica, which is one of the largest contract manufacturers, and got involved in business development. Went down that route, and that's what really started getting me interested in electronics and understanding that. Electronics, outsourcing, design service, product development. So I switched quickly from one career right into the corporate world and went right into a publicly traded company, and then that just led to a couple different opportunities, which led to the company right before NimbeLink.
So just curious, I'm a civilian, so. So I'm always curious about how that transition went for you. I mean, that's not always an easy transition to make from military to the corporate world, and especially when you go to a Fortune 500 company. Do you feel like that made it easier or more difficult?
For me, the transition went pretty easily because I actually was involved with recruiting my last 6 years of the Navy, and so I ran recruiting as a sales manager for the Southern Minnesota, and so I'm in the market at sales. Was not really in the Navy per se, so the transition was very easy for me. So I was very fortunate.
Yeah,
but now there's some great groups out there like Bunker Labs and a lot of incubators that are helping entrepreneurs, helping people coming out of the
Hire
military.
Heroes.
Yep.
We've got one here in Atlanta, Vetlanta. They do a great job.
It's true.
Transition for vets. Yeah.
Okay.
A lot of great resources.
So you've touched on, you said the E word, entrepreneur. I'd love to kind of get to the point where you chose to found your own company. Tell us about that.
Yeah, so I would classify myself as the reluctant entrepreneur.
Okay.
As I was working.
Is that trademarked?
I don't think that was trademarked. Maybe we could get that one. Maybe we could write a.
I'll have it done by the end
there
of the
you go.
show.
We could write a book
on
that.
Name.
All right, thanks. I was at a nice private company, had a number of engineers doing product development, and it was just we had some great ideas, and the people had great ideas in the organization, but there the ownership just didn't want to take them forward. And so we had some good partnerships with some carriers, with Verizon and some technology folks, and one of the key engineers at the company and I decided that we would just take it, and we actually asked the owners if, hey, do you want us to spin out this technology and use it? And they said no, and so we just went out and decided to do it on our own. I dabbled a little bit, very unsuccessfully, as an investor in a beer company while I was at that. You know, I was thinking, hey, maybe I could become a brewer, and I say
wrong state.
You know, actually, it's doing very well now.
Is it? Oh,
yeah.
Okay.
But it's just a learning thing that, you know, you should never get involved in a business where you'd rather consume the product than sell it.
Don't make your vacation your vocation.
There you
right?
go. Yeah. So that didn't work out.
Yeah.
But overall, then moved into NimbeLink, and we can talk a little bit further about that if you'd like.
Yeah. So what I find really interesting there is that you just took after in the military, right, where you've got lots of structure and a lot of stability, and then working for publicly held companies where I assume there's a lot of structure and stability, at least in the roles I heard you speak to. And then to take a huge leap with we're founding a technology company. I mean, what was it? Was there one thing that kind of pushed you over the edge?
You know, I was just fortunate, you know, again, you know, I was, you know, I had medical paid for from the military, you know, so financially it wasn't as big a risk as you might perceive. But at the same time, starting the company, the challenge for me was to be flexible and put process in place, but not put so much process in place that it would slow us down and stifle the company.
Yeah, and working for the government for 20 years and then corporate America.
And then
that's not exactly training for that, is it?
No, and I ran, you know, a large manufacturing group, and so, you know, Six Sigma and process and, you know, and doing all of that. But it actually was pretty easy, you know, but, you know, I now 7 years later, looking back on it, you know, some of the things that we did, because we did put some process, actually really helped us. Putting a CRM tool in before we put a financial tool in, and, you know, just some of those type things that, and following a sales process and doing those type things. So all that education, training, experience allowed me, and then we implemented the entrepreneurial operating system. I don't know if you ran across that. EOS, and so that was So it's process. So I got to put in a process that was actually vetted very well for new enterprises.
Yeah.
And it forced me to kind of follow something that was a little simpler. So that was very helpful.
Yeah. Actually, I've done that at a couple companies as well.
Have you?
So, yeah. Who is your
Gene Wickman
implementer? Yeah.
No,
did you use Gino? Or
no, I actually went and just self-trained and did it myself.
Did you? Okay.
Yeah, so I went and actually, as I started the business in 2013, wasn't making any money. So
you had time on your hands.
I had time on my hands, you know, and so I went in and actually implemented it somewhere else as a consultant, just to pay the bills while we were starting NimbeLink and getting that rolled out.
It's a fantastic process. I'd highly encourage companies to use that.
So we've mentioned NimbeLink probably 17 times now.
Yeah. Now, why did we mention that? What is it you do now?
So tell us more about what the company does.
Yeah. So in a nutshell, if you look at NimbeLink, we're an enabling technology company. We enable others to actually connect their devices, connect their products through cellular. So we are staying ahead of the game to make sure that we understand cellular technology, and we do what we can to make it easy for OEMs, other companies to integrate. So we started in 2013, and we still have a line of products that are embedded modems. So it's an end device certified embedded modem. Customer chooses it. They design their product, get into market faster. And it's very horizontal, which is exciting because we embed modems into drones, into kiosks, into combines, into all kinds of different products.
So when you say horizontal, it's widely applicable.
Correct.
Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
Okay. All right.
Yes.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
You're a couple pay grades ahead of me, above me here.
I have a really basic question. So this is the question that always comes to mind when we talk about these kind of technologies. Why cellular versus Bluetooth, RFID, Wi-Fi, whatever?
and I don't know how technical you want me to get.
Well,
but let's talk about the high-level business case.
What it gives you.
So anytime you have a product that moves from point A to point B to point C, and especially if it's outside of a building.
Right.
So Bluetooth and a lot of the tech work really well when you're in a confined area. You can control it. But as soon as you leave this building and you leave Atlanta and want to go to Washington, D.C., and then the next day you're going to be in Bismarck, North Dakota, you need a technology that you can actually communicate wherever it's at. And cellular's everywhere. So that's at a high level.
Yep.
And then the other thing that really caught us early on is companies coming to us wanting cellular in places we never expected it. So somebody that builds a kiosk or a display and they're going to go put it in Walmart, they expected to just walk in and plug it into the Ethernet. And, well, they're saying there's no way we're letting you in our IT system.
Yeah.
So they had to build a cellular connectivity so they could upload and download their digital displays and their commercials in the evenings. So anywhere somebody wants autonomous connection where you don't want to deal with the IT, that's one area. And if you're remote, it's another area. And if products are moving around.
Yep.
So I worked with a major marketplace retail company named for a river who shall remain nameless. And one of the issues that we had frequently when they were building a new facility was there wasn't cellular there, or there wasn't Wi-Fi in the facility yet because the walls had just gone up and the roof had just gone on. Do you experience that even if you're inside the four walls, is cellular more available than Wi-Fi?
Yes.
Or more reliable?
Yeah. I mean, does your phone work?
Sometimes. I'm on it. Yeah. I'm not going to say who I'm on.
So if you're
sometimes.
But if your phone's working, then you can get your machine connected.
Right.
So if you think about it that way. Yeah. But what's interesting with some of the new technologies, you might hear the word LTE-M or CAT-M. That technology actually penetrates walls better. It actually goes deeper.
Got it.
And part of the 5G revolution,
that's
right?
That's correct. There you go. Yeah.
And is that the benefit? I mean, I think people think 5G is something. It's really just more penetrable, more
it's two things,
broader and wider broadband.
Because the G
access.
just stands for generation.
So
it's
the
fifth generation
of cellular.
And really interesting, the fourth generation is not being cannibalized to make the fifth generation. It's actually being built upon. Whereas the fourth generation replaced the third generation, and the third generation replaced the second generation.
Got it.
So 5G is actually enhancing and building out the fourth generation. And what's happening with the fifth generation is you got the really, 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 really high speed that's going to drive augmented reality and the connected car and all this stuff. But then you have a splicing down here that we're going to be able to get down here and do really low power data. And that's what's really exciting. That's what's driving the opportunities that that's allowing us to track things in the supply chain and making the supply chain tracking more feasible today than it was just 6 months ago.
Interesting.
So how would beyond what you've already shared about NimbeLink and what you do, when you think about the why, your why, whether you interpret that as founding the company or your why to grow in the company and serving and having a reason for existing, a reason for jumping out of bed in the morning and going to bed at night thinking about NimbeLink and what you do for your customers, what would that why be?
Yeah, so it's the customers and the employees. It's really exciting. We just had one of the employees just had a baby 2 weeks ago. We got another one coming. We got family growing. It's really cool.
That is efficient.
So we actually have this great. We got 22 employees now, and the families, and so the why today is probably different than the why was 5 years ago. As I look at building the company and going out and the driving to get up is that's exciting to me, is seeing the employment and the families and the culture that we're creating. From a customer perspective, we're also seeing the exciting where we're by customers working with us and us partnering with them, that they're able to increase their revenue, increase their bottom lines and hire more people. So we're actually seeing a really great impact by doing what we do to allow other companies to actually expand and build their businesses.
So can you give us you've got a few devices here.
Sure. Brought lots of toys this
I feel compelled to handle them. Yeah. So if you're listening and not watching,
I got some
you can't see them,
for
but
you.
Yeah. They're not they're not they're not big or special looking, but give us an idea of what somebody would use one of these puppies for.
So as I mentioned, we got a couple. Our one line of business are cellular modems, and then when LTM came into place, the low power, a number of people asked us to make asset trackers to track assets that move indoors and outdoors that didn't have power. So what you're seeing here are battery-operated asset tracking devices, and it's the reason we're here at the show, is to actually help customers understand, help companies understand that they can track their assets today when they move indoors and outdoors. So you take this particular unit that I'm holding here. It's I don't know, what do you say? That's about 5 inches, 4.5 inches.
It's like a cigar almost. Yeah.
This has a cellular module inside it.
Okay.
It has the ability to do location with cellular triangulation, Wi-Fi sniffing, SSID sniffing, and GPS location. It's got an accelerometer, so you can actually, if it's moving,
it knows it's vertical or horizontal.
It does. If it's not supposed to move, it starts moving. It can wake up. It's got temperature and humidity inside this, and it's all run on 2 AA batteries. And right now, if you shut this down in between communications, say, hey, just wake up once a day and say, hey, here I am. This will last about 5 years on these 2 AA batteries.
AA batteries.
And so,
not making Duracell very happy with that, Scott.
Yeah, exactly. And these other ones are just different versions of that. But what's exciting about this right now, and the reason the supply chain is so excited about this, is that typically when things move from point A to point B, they don't have power. You know, it's not like you got to set a power pack and plug it in.
Right.
And when you walk around this show, there's great technologies. RFID's been here for a long time. And RFID is a great technology, and it's not going away. And it works very well when you're tracking within the warehouse. But when that product leaves the warehouse and goes into a truck you don't own, and you don't have any infrastructure in there, you lost visibility.
Right.
Yep.
And that's all the rage in this global era right now, right?
Right.
What's old is new again. That was a part of the came out of the first conversation, the very first episode here at MODEX, and there's a little bit of an element here with RFID because it's not good. It's been around forever, but the application is still very, very valid.
Sure, and we've actually talked about putting an RFID tag,
in this as well.
On this, or have the radio, so you could actually use this as a mobile access point that's traveling along with that. So you could, RFID or Bluetooth or some other technology.
Yeah.
To go along with it.
So this does a lot of magic, and it's not an insignificant size. It's not something you would put on, the box for your iPhone.
That's right.
What do you track with this kind of stuff?
Yeah, so if you think about an asset that's moving indoors and outdoors, moving around, reusable containers that are very expensive, we've actually are tracking down to the pallet level.
Okay.
So if you think about...
we got some guys you need to talk to.
Yeah, there you go. So, tracking down to the pallet level to actually... and you think about, everybody talks about the hype of IoT, the Internet of Things.
Yep.
But in reality, there's probably just 3 key drivers to an IoT implementation. Number one would be, can I just use it to optimize my own assets? Can I actually use them more efficiently? Can I get more turns out of them? So tracking, a pallet that you want to reuse or a container or something that you want to reuse is one. Or if I'm losing them and I don't know where they are, so that's just really the optimization. The second area is, can I increase customer satisfaction? Is there something I can do with an asset tracker that, well, now can I tell my customer that, it's on its way and it's going to be there in about 24 hours. Or, I shipped this and I know that the temperature was between 60 and 70 degrees the whole time because I've been tracking that for you, Mr. Customer.
That's really valuable for frozen or deep frozen product, flowers, produce, all of that sort of thing.
And the pharmaceutical world is really driving that cold chain. And then the third thing is, can I actually generate more revenue for my company by having an IoT device on my... So can I actually, now that I actually am tracking down to the pallet level, does that add more value, and can I actually charge more for it? So, some companies can actually do the whole three and call that a grand slam, of IoT.
I love it. We need to figure out how to use those things here at Supply Chain Now.
And
who knows? We put one on the back of you. And
I'm going to put them on my daughter's cars is what I'm going to do.
There you go.
All right. So now that I think we've got a pretty fundamental understanding what NimbeLink does and the value proposition there, let's talk about where you spend your time now. As founder and CEO of the organization, small but growing team.
Sure.
Where do you spend your time, and where do you love spending your time?
Sure. So I've been fortunate now to actually be able to hire some folks. So I'm spending a lot less time in the finances, spending a lot less time in managing the manufacturing and the building and the supply chain of getting these products built. Obviously, when
you got people for that now.
We do, yeah. But it's obvious when there's situations going on like we have now, where the components are going hard to find. You get more involved in those type things. But so I'm finding myself having the flexibility to spend more time to actually think strategically a little bit about the roadmap, the technology roadmap, talking to customers, coming to shows like this to be out and about, to understand what the market's driving, what the market's asking for. And actually that's what I like to do, and business development and working and solving problems with our customers. So I'm able to do more of that now.
I sense that the business development, your euphemism for sales, is probably one of your gifts, right? Anyone who can convince somebody to live on a ship for 6 months.
There you go. Yeah.
Right.
My best story is a guy walked in and said, what do you want to do? And he says, I want to be a chiropractor.
Okay.
And I said, so how's that going for you? And he joined the Navy like the next day.
Really?
Yeah, because I showed him how he could get his education and his school, and because he was a bricklayer. Yeah. And I said, how's that working for you? How are you going to be a chiropractor being a bricklayer?
Yeah.
So
that's some tough work.
He's going to wind up a chiropractor's client being a bricklayer.
Yeah. So it ended up I haven't kept in contact with him now, but it worked out very well with him. So. Yeah, I do. I like solving problems.
Yeah.
Because in order to, in sales, business development, if you can't figure out the problem, you're never going to solve it. And then, that's really what sales is about, is solving problems.
Well, couldn't you imagine sitting across the table from Scott, and he's got a passion for the technology, he's got a passion for solving problems, and of course, he founded a company, and he probably knows more than anyone else what it can do and what it can't do.
I'm sold, and I don't even have any application.
We'll take a box of these.
Whatever those do, we want them.
All right, perfect.
But
invoice Greg White up in Kennesaw, Georgia.
Yeah,
right?
There you go.
Yeah, and I think what's interesting about your entrepreneurial spirit is how you engage the families of your company in this. I mean, look, we're both entrepreneurs, and we consider it an extended family, right? When you have a company, you have to be as concerned about other people's family and their well-being as you are your own, because I do, when I've run companies, I feel a personal responsibility for the livelihoods of those people, and I can sense that, that kind of connection that you have with your folks.
Yeah, and I can't take credit for it. So I've grown in my relationship with the Lord, and He's really helped put that in front of me. My third career, as I'm going to be ordained as a deacon in the Catholic Church in May.
Wow.
So as I look moving towards that, obviously I'll be doing both, one foot in the world and one foot in the church. But as I look at that, so obviously you can't believe in the Lord and not believe in the dignity of the human being and the family and doing all that together. So I wasn't always like that. There was a time in my life when I was
Navy.
I was in the Navy, yeah, and I was very egotistical and self-driven, and there wasn't a lot of need for other people, and so it's been a transition in my life.
Leadership is service, though, isn't it? I mean, servant leadership is a real thing.
It really is,
and I think it's a really important way to lead as well.
All right, so I got to ask you the question: is there just like with your entrepreneurial journey, right? There was one thing that maybe puts you over the edge and said, okay, I'm going to take this leap with this next chapter in your life that you've described. What's that one thing, if there is one?
Yeah, it was gradual. So I can't say I got struck by lightning or I had a voice or, it wasn't really one thing, but it was a number of people, invitations, and I studied stewardship. Actually within, and stewardship, is realizing that where your gifts come from, and then realize that you need to take those gifts, enhance them, make them better, and then turn them back to the greater glory of God for the glory of everybody else. So I think it was that study and that relationship, because my biggest challenge was I had the longest trip I had to take was about 18 inches, and taking it from my head to my heart, and that took a long time because I had a hardened heart.
I was wondering where you were going to go with that, Scott. I was trying to stay with it, but that makes perfect sense. I'm going to steal that from you, too.
That's not a big step. That 18 inches, that's like half a step.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But that was
that's good.
That was years.
That's a good analogy.
I think a lot of what you shared there, and we've got a very diverse audience from around the globe. I think what you shared there's an application regardless of what your walk of life, your religion, you name it. There's a leadership nugget you just shared there.
Well, if you think about it, if you've studied literature at all, it's kind of the classic hero story, right? It's the reluctant servant, right, who is enlightened and then feels the obligation and is nurtured to apply that obligation to help enlighten others, right? And I think you take a good approach to it, right? I mean, it's about helping other people, right? So
yeah, I found that it's like with customers, anybody, if you can help them and help them solve their problems and get yourself out of the way, it's all going to work out.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're going to switch gears a little bit here as we're looking to broaden the conversation out.
Yeah.
So there's no shortage of things that are taking place around the global end-to-end supply chain, the new circular economy where we're all headed, right?
Sure.
So when you survey that business landscape every morning, what's one or two things, and this is a standard piece of each of the interviews we do. So we don't have to be locked in on technology. We don't have to be locked in on workforce or leadership. Just
even supply chain,
or even
right? I mean,
we've
really gotten all kinds of opinions.
What's the one or two things in the business space that you're tracking more than others right now?
Well, so it's hard not to track in the business space this virus that's going on. So I mean that's probably not fair. But when you think about it and you think about how much impact that's had and how fast it's having it, one has to pay attention to what is the next thing, because when we are a global economy, we are building our supply chain into this just-in-time supply chain where you can become shortages and things disappear really quickly. So when I think of look at the at the business as far as how do you mitigate and how do you make sure that you keep the supply chain flowing and keep enough of the long lead time items, make sure that you have visibility into the supply chain. So for me the big the business is just how do you make a plan A and maybe a plan B, and be thinking about disaster recoveries and thinking about those things. And always thought about it, but I think this situation, because right now in reality there's it's unfortunate and it's sad that people are dying and people are getting sick, but we have this happen all the time with the flu,
right?
And then something just
tuberculosis,
and something just drives this, and boom, we have this disruption, where people last week were wondering if this show was even going to happen. That it could have got canceled.
Yeah, I think.
And many did.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. I think the interesting thing here, as we've talked about this kind of between the shows and between the shows, is, we hope this is undoubtedly, regardless of how this is viewed 10 years from now or 100 years from now, from a human element and from a medical standpoint, the global supply chain community is getting hit hard, and probably the worst is yet to come. I think an interesting question, that rhetorical, is if this had not started.
That means he doesn't want me to answer it.
Definitely. If this had not started in China, that has so many countries depend on from a variety of different perspectives. If this had started, and I'm not going to insert a country in an article. No one lives down there.
Sure.
This would have been a much different impact in so many different ways, especially for the supply chain community,
Well, and the timing also. It happened in China during the Chinese New Year, when everybody was home and nobody was, because otherwise everybody already would have been quarantined in their factories and they would have just worked more.
That's a really good point.
So that was, so I agree. I think if right now, I know people in Italy, but the quarantine of Italy is not impacting global economy.
Right.
And so the fact that it was in a large country that's
in a huge industrial city.
Yeah, that's huge. That is the primary
manufacturing center of China.
Yeah,
according to some sources.
Well, China of the globe.
Yes.
I mean, right?
Yes.
China is likewise of the globe.
Sure.
Yeah.
So I think that's an area that we just need to continue to pay attention to and think about, and how to manage. I think the other area from a high level that we keep hearing about is just the training and education of our young people. How to make sure we continue to keep a workforce that's skilled. And how to keep that going. It doesn't matter if it's supply chain, whatever it is.
Right.
Just as you look at as a global, as a U.S. economy, to keep that going, how do we maintain the skills and then also the trades? What do we? How do we help? Young people go into the trades so that all those things can get worked on and we can build our infrastructure and so.
Yeah, I think we're a little bit upside down right now.
You told me to be broad. Yes,
no. I think that. Look, we talk about talent is probably one of the things we talk about until the last few weeks. Talent was one of the things we talked about most. Look, the largest generation in the history of the planet is exiting the workforce at 10,000 per day. They will never, ever be fully replaced.
Sure.
Right? Reproduction is down. The decline of population is inevitable now by 2070. And so we have to think about things in new ways, right? And and it is a little bit upside down because we got kids coming out of school with college degrees working for $35,000, $40,000 a year. We got people going to vocational school or no school, becoming plumbers and I mean valuable trades, making $130,000, $150,000, $180,000 a year. I mean, you really have to evaluate whether whether we need to change something. Obviously, we do.
Yeah, and I think that, and that's where technology can come in and replace some of that.
Yep.
And it is already, and you're seeing that. And but overall, I think those are a couple areas that I would look at.
Okay.
Very common. Yeah, that's good. I like your insight.
So we got to make sure there's going to be some folks, undoubtedly, as we wind this interview down, that are going to say, okay, I got to get in touch with Scott Schwalbe, and got to compare notes, and it may be from a couple different angles. But first off, how can our listeners learn more about NimbeLink?
Well, we've got a website, NimbeLink.com.
And that's NimbeLink.
Yes.
.com.
.com.
And you and Vin are also here at booth 2005 at MODEX.
That's correct.
In case we have any live listeners that want to stop by and meet one heck of a team, one heck of a 1-2 punch.
There you go.
We've really enjoyed the interactions.
It was really really good talking to Vin. Right?
It's amazing what you can pick up.
It speaks a lot to the culture of your company. Sorry, you were going to say that.
No, that's kind of what I was.
That speaks a lot to the culture of our company. We interrupt one another,
right?
But we think alike.
There you go.
NimbeLink.com, Scott. Fascinating. Really looking forward. We're going to have to check back in on where's the company based? What city?
Yeah, Plymouth, Minnesota. So we're just western suburb of Minneapolis.
Okay.
The pride of Plymouth, Minnesota. We're going to have to check back in on how 2020 unfolds.
Great.
It seems by all accounts it's going to be a great year for y'all. It's really exciting to see what you're up to. And, just like some of the conversations we've had here, it's very refreshing to hear from the top, that proverbial C-suite, a real down-to-earth, earnest, people-first attitude and disposition.
Yep.
That is very genuine.
Yeah.
We get all kinds, but it always really sticks out when that hits the show here.
Yeah. Oh, wait. How can they reach you? LinkedIn?
I think I do have a LinkedIn. Yeah, it's
they can reach you through Vin.
Yeah, through Vin.
Through Vin on the site. Yeah. Okay.
I'm on LinkedIn, and we
or fishing in the summertime.
There you go.
Right?
That would be awesome.
Okay.
Yeah. Look me up. We'll go fishing.
Lake Minnetonka.
Yeah.
So NimbeLink.com, NimbeLink.com. You can also check them out. Booth 2005 here at MODEX. I saw a bunch of folks rallying around the booth. Y'all must have been doing something over there pretty magical. But really have enjoyed Scott Schwalbe, co-founder and CEO at NimbeLink. Thanks so much, Scott.
Yeah. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. You bet. Pleasure. All right, so to our audience, what a great interview that was. Stay tuned for our continuing coverage of MODEX here in Atlanta, GA, the supply chain city. Also, from over at supplychainnowradio.com, you can check out our events and our webinar tabs. We've got a variety of both in-person and digital events coming up with partners such as EFT Reuters Events, the Automotive Industry Action Group, the Georgia Logistics Summit, our stand up and
sound off.
Sound off is coming up, which is a very
sound off.
I got to print that in my brain a little better. But
you want to use the you like
yes.
all of us in supply chain. You want to use the acronym.
Absolutely.
Yeah, SOSU.
Yeah, we're not quite there yet with that one. No.
See, I can't even do it.
But check out all our events, supplychainnowradio.com. If you can't find something you're looking for, reach out to our CMO, Amanda, at supplychainnowradio.com. Big thanks again, Greg. What a great conversation with Scott Schwalbe.
Fantastic.
With NimbeLink. Really enjoyed his perspective here today. What else can you add? We're going to have you back for maybe a series of leadership-focused chats there, Scott.
Yeah, I think there's not much to add except that this is really valuable, and even more so with the coming new technology in cellular.
5G.
Yep.
All right, so to our audience, be sure to check out all the upcoming events we've got. As we mentioned, supplychainnowradio.com. Find us wherever you get your podcast from. Be sure to subscribe so you don't miss a thing. What's your favorite platform they can find us on?
I don't know. Let me think about YouTube.
Okay. On behalf of the entire team here, Scott Luton and Greg White, wishing you a wonderful week ahead. Stay tuned for the remainder of our MODEX coverage, and we'll see you next time here on Supply Chain Now. Thanks, everybody.